So let's talk about some wrist pain if you're doing the incline push-ups. What does that mean? What's something that, what can you do to sort of help correct that? One of the actually most common things that happens is that when people set up, instead of keeping their wrist straight, when they lower down, they really kind of roll and extend the wrist, which takes the emphasis off the bigger muscles of the chest and the shoulder, and it puts it right on the wrist joint. So what do I mean? So basically when the person's setting up, they come down and they drop their hands down like this, so that a lot of pressure is put right in through here. Ideally what you want when you come down is that the wrist stays up this way, not down this way. When you drop the hand down like that, that takes, again, the emphasis from the bigger muscles that should be doing the work, and it puts it squarely on the joint. So now you're stressing and you're overloading the wrist joints, and especially in that bottom position when all your weight is down here. So what you want to try to do is when you set your hand position with the knurling, is try to wrap your thumbs over the top if you can. Some people don't like the way that feels. If you can, try to do that, and then really lock your wrists so that when you come down and get to the bottom position, you don't drop into this. Now, that could mean temporarily you don't come all the way down to the bar. That's fine. I think what you want to work on is come down under control, and if you feel you get to a point where the wrists start to do that, stop and then go back the other direction, go back to that top position, because you don't want to reinforce this position. It's going to hurt, and from a muscle building standpoint and a strength standpoint, there is actually no benefit. It does not help you to do that to your wrist. Again, what you want to do is keep the wrist straight as you lower down, as you press back up. So really be aware of that, even if it means you have to limit your range of motion temporarily. So let's say you're on the floor doing some push-ups, but you feel some discomfort in the wrist. What does that mean? What can you do about it? So sometimes your wrist just may not tolerate being in that extended position. So when you have your wrist back in that push-up position, the wrists are extended, and sometimes that when you're kind of putting weight through it in that position, the wrists don't like being in that position. Now, there could be some underlying causes in terms of why that might be. We're not going to worry about that right now. I'm going to give you two options that you can use to work around the fact that they don't like being in that position. So the goal when doing push-ups on the floor is to keep the wrist out of a lot of extension if that's where you have your pain. So with the mat, what we do is by placing the bottom of the palm on the mat, it actually keeps your wrist from having to go into a fully extended position. So this is one way that you can stay doing push-ups on the floor without having to deal with the pain. So what you would do, you want to have a pretty good sized mat. So this mat, one square here is got some pretty good thickness. I've actually folded up, so I have two squares here. So what I'm going to do is put the bottom part of your palm on the mat, and then your fingers will still come down onto the floor. And again, what this does is it keeps me out of this fully extended position here. So I go onto the mat this way, and then I'm able to still do my push-ups. Okay, allows you to work around the issue at hand, which is the pain in the wrist doing the push-up. So if you're having a problem with it, try to find a pretty good solid mat, put some pretty good sort of thickness to it, put it under the base of the palm there, and try doing a few reps and see if you notice any difference in the wrist pain. Another great option that you can utilize for managing your wrist pain when doing push-ups on the floor is to set up on a pair of dumbbells. What this does, it actually keeps your wrist in a pretty neutral position throughout. So this works great, and as you get stronger, if you're familiar with band push-ups, where you have the band behind your back, you can still utilize a band around the back and sort of goes to your hands while on dumbbells. So that's a cool option too. You can still progress your push-ups even if you can't get on the floor and do them without any kind of assistance. So the goal here is grab a couple of dumbbells. Now, I would recommend that you use the hexagonal dumbbells. I don't recommend that you do this with dumbbells that are round on the end, okay? You're a grown-up, I'm assuming, so you can do whatever you want. But the problem with that is if you get tired and if that thing rolls and takes off on you, you're asking for something bad to go wrong. So I would highly recommend using the hexagonal dumbbells for something like this. Again, keep it simple. Remember, we're dealing with pain here, so the rules are a little different than maybe if you're working on something else without the pain. So what you would do is set up in a very similar way to a regular push-up. You can turn the dumbbells. I have these they're turned slightly. For me, that's the most comfortable position when I do this. But you set up just like you would for a regular push-up. Here, control down. And having the hand on the dumbbell allows the wrist to go into only a little bit of extension, a lot less than on the floor. And even when using the mat, it's a lot less than using the mat as well. So if you tried the mat strategy and that didn't work, try the dumbbells. And make sure you grab, I would say, at least a 15 or 20 pound dumbbell, only because you want to make sure you have enough room to be able to wrap your hand around. If you grab a dumbbell that's too low in denomination, like a 5 or an 8, you may have a hard time getting your hands underneath. So pick something at least 15. It doesn't have to be super heavy. Get yourself on there, and then actually up in the dumbbells will also afford you a little bit more of a stretch and a little bit more range of motion in the bottom position than what you might get if you were on the floor.